Things might get a little crazier than usual in this review, because we are covering our very first DLC character, the hero of Dragon Quest. This unassuming swordsman has sparked quite the controversy as far back as his gameplay reveal the day before his release, with many players still considering his polarizing design unfit for competitive play and worthy of a ban. Well, this series is not really interested in drama, so be sure to watch my Frame Data 101 video if you're unfamiliar with any terms I'm going to use, and let's take an analytical look at this crazy character's toolkit and see how he really stacks up. Or alternatively, if you don't have this character yet, see if he's worth your money. For those unfamiliar with the Dragon Quest series, aka Americans, let me enlighten you. All the way back in the early 80s, Enix, this was before they were Square, held a programming contest, and Yuji Horii was such a nerd that he won, and decided to use this opportunity to turn D&D into a Famicom game. A few years and some commissions to Akira Toriyama later, Dragon Quest was born. Ever since then, Dragon Quest has been basically the halo of Japan, selling millions of units, being the first series to get a midnight release, and even becoming a synonym for video game over there. Each game has its own unique protagonist, so instead of just having one, Smash decided to include reps from Dragon Quest 3, 4, 8, and 11, most likely due to their similar proportions, and stuck the rest of the lot in the final Smash. Speaking of proportions, Hero has some pretty unremarkable stats across the board. He is just slightly heavier than Mario, which technically means he's a heavy, but you'll still be dying to things at percents that you'd expect. He's relatively quick on the ground, clocking in just under Wii Fit Trainer, but his airspeed is pretty mediocre. Combined with his awful air acceleration and below average fall speed, once Hero is in the air, he becomes very vulnerable. There is not a lot of nuance to his air movement, and as such, Hero's landings are very predictable and easy to catch, not to mention juggle situations become that much more deadly. It's a shame really, because as we will see later, most of Hero's normal attacks worth using are aerials, but his poor air stats make them tricky to hit, while also giving him the disadvantage of a true heavyweight. This can make it really difficult for Hero to get through some characters' zones. Fortunately, that shield isn't just for show, and can be used similarly to Link's to block all sorts of projectiles while standing, walking, or crouching. It's a bit gimmicky, but can come in handy for some matchups. You might have also noticed the bar above Hero's portrait labeled MP. These are your mana points. Every single special move from the smallest Ember to the biggest Dragon Ball Z finishing move draws from this meter, including your recovery, which can be problematic sometimes. Different moves obviously use different amounts of magic, so I will list the cost as we cover each one. You spend mana at the first frame of any special move's activation, even before the spell takes effect or its hitbox comes out, so you could end up simply wasting your MP if you get hit out of it. You gain 1 mana point back every second, but if the menu is open or you're using a special move, this regeneration will stop. Keep that in mind when you're using every bit of mana to recover. The easier way to get mana back is to hit the opponent with attacks that don't use it. 80% of all damage you do with your normals will be regained back as mana. So for example, a down smash doing 13% will net you back about 10 MP, but F smash, which does 18 base, will give you 14 MP back, and so on. Crucially, this includes hitting shields and parries as well. The game rewards you for being aggressive in this way, so it will be up to you to find a balance between expending resources on long-range spells and gaining them back with short-range melee hits, as Hero without mana is crippled as a character. But that's not really what defines Hero. That isn't what's getting people to call for his ban from the competitive scene. No, that's all down to a little move called Command Select. I know I usually save specials for last, but this one defines Hero and permeates through the rest of his entire moveset to the point where it's more of a trait than just a simple special move, so we will cover it first. True to his JRPG roots, Hero has the ability to pull up a menu of different moves, put on his big think face, and pick whichever suits him in that moment. There are 21 different spells or commands that you get from this one input, but only 4 will show up at once. This is the first of many RNG aspects of Hero's moveset, but you aren't completely at the mercy of luck. On the screen I have the basic chances for each spell to appear, but there are ways to manipulate these figures to your advantage. For starters, you cannot get the same command 2 menus in a row, so pay attention to what spells were in the last selection, especially since you can simply cancel out of the menu with jump or shield, and cycle through until you get what you want. Some spells have certain modifiers that change how often they normally appear in the menu, which we will cover when we get to them. And spells of the same family like Bang and Kaboom also cannot appear in the same menu with each other. And of course you can't get a boost spell like Psychup when you already have it active on your person. Keep this in the back of your mind when you are forced to quickly throw out menu commands without really reading them, as you'll have a better idea of what you're getting yourself into. But what are you getting yourself into? Exactly what kind of commands are at your fingertips with this menu? Well guys, there are over 20 moves to go through here, and I think that calls for a big ass lightning round. We will be flying through each move pretty quickly, so pay attention to the notes on the screen for more info. Let's do this.
Ready? Go!
Let's get things started off with a bang, literally. The fastest of all of Hero's commands, this spell shoots a little ball that will explode either a half a second later, or if it hits something, dealing a decent chunk of damage in its relatively small radius. It can kill, but I wouldn't call it a kill move. No, this spell is best shot at the ledge, as the explosion stays out for a long time, covering a lot of options. Aside from that, it doesn't do anything too special, but it doesn't use that much magic, so it doesn't hurt to throw out every once in a while. Unlike its big brother Kaboom, which has plenty of hurt, this spell cranks up everything about Bang about threefold. It's almost as fast, deals much more damage, has a much bigger splash radius, stays active even longer, and has a suction effect so powerful it can drag opponents off the stage. I've seen players caught in the midst die below 70%, and even the late hit punches like a smash attack. It also detonates when it hits other projectiles, which can either help or hurt you depending on the situation. Its only real weaknesses are that it costs a hefty amount of magic to use, it can be avoided with a well-timed neutral air dodge, and it has a bad blind spot up close, allowing the opponent to just jump over and hit you. But this is by far the best command Hero has in his selection, and probably one of the best projectiles in the game. Let's keep the fireworks coming with Sizz and Sizzle. These two attacks are basically identical, with Sizzle being bigger and stronger than Sizz. These little magic missiles will explode on contact with an opponent, projectile, or wall, spreading out and scorching the earth around them. These spells travel fast, making them great for top decking or quick turnaround casting, which can be done by flicking the C-stick in the opposite direction. Hero struggles against zoners, but with these spells you can hit their projectiles and have the burn effect spread to them. The very weak first hit makes it horrible on shield, but good against absorbers as they'll barely get anything out of it, and although their linear nature give them a big vertical blind spot, it still makes your opponent respect a lot of area and can scare them into jumping off ledge. Not a bad set of spells for sure. Moving on to the crazier projectiles, we have Whack. The subject of much discourse in the community, this little ball of death has the chance to either do 1% or instantly banish the enemy to the Shadow Realm. The higher percent you and your opponent have, the higher the chance to kill, with 160 being an absolute guarantee. It doesn't matter if they have armor or they go into a shell, they still die. Because of this risk, Whack isn't best used for killing necessarily, as it's pretty slow and easy to avoid. Instead, you want to use its huge range to threaten and cover an area, as the enemy would much rather respect it than take the risk of instant death. It's fairly cheap on MP too, so it's worth throwing out to make the opponent shook, and the mental damage dealt by evaporating a stock below 50% cannot be understated. But if you want the ultimate vibe check, you'll need Big Daddy Thwack. Essentially the same as Whack, but with a huge hitbox in front instead of a small projectile. This giant ball of death covers basically all options off ledge. It's a lot slower than Whack, but above 70% it's definitely worth using if you're in position for it. It's an acceptable Hail Mary option at lower percents, but for the magic, you're better off using something more reliable. And just like Whack, you'll want to look out for reflectors or your day could go sour pretty quick. Snooze is the last of the projectiles to be covered, and it's an odd one, this time not dealing any damage but instead putting opponents to sleep. What this usually means is at least a smash attack punish, if not an entire stock depending on the percent, if you manage to actually hit it. Short range makes it a bit difficult to land, so it's used to neutralize attacks your opponent is already doing, or travel through their projectiles to hit them on the other side. As hilarious as putting opponents to sleep in the air can be, this also makes it hard to nail them down for the punish sometimes, so stay alert. And oh yeah, don't get it reflected. Moving off of projectiles and into the passive boosts, next is Bounce. This essentially gives Hero a Franklin badge for 12 seconds, reflecting any and all projectiles back stronger and faster. This gives you a brief respite from the struggle Hero normally has against zoning walls and can even force Snake to actually play the game. Even if you aren't in a projectile-heavy matchup, using Bounce will still take it off the menu for the time being and protect you from other reflectors, sometimes allowing for some multi-reflect shenanigans. The fact you can do other things while it's up let you get crazy setups and pressure that other reflectors can't. One of Hero's best commands for sure. If you'd rather outrun projectiles instead, you can use Accelerator. Using this will drastically boost all of Hero's movement stats, letting him run faster than a speeding bullet bill and leap whole stages in a single bound. It honestly can be a little hard to control, as Hero still can't change direction very well, and it does make you take a bit more knockback, but the combo trees that this buff opens can be well worth the unwieldy nature. If only it made your attacks faster. If you value power over speed, I recommend Oomph. As the name suggests, this spell gives your melee attacks a bit more oomph, 60% more to be exact, combined with a 10% boost to knockback for a serious buff. This has the side effect of making your moves a lot safer on shield, and of course they'll kill a bit earlier as well. The downside is that you'll have to take 20% more damage when hit, and due to Hero's lackluster melee frame data, you're forced to open yourself up to make the most out of it, and sometimes you'll simply be comboed for the entire 12 seconds it's up. When it goes off, it really goes off, just be careful. But that's not the only power buff. Oh no, we have psychup too. This time you get 20% more damage, 20% more knockback, and an astounding 65% boost to shield damage. The latter means that any semi-charged or critical smash attack, which we'll get to later, will instantly break a full shield, and Hero has some of the best shield break punishes. All this greatness comes with no downsides, except that you only get one hit, and when I say one hit, I mean any hit. Even hitting things like Pikmin or Gordos will lose your boost. You can still use projectiles though. Because of this, it's in your best interest to make that one hit count with something big, but since psychup wrecks shields so hard and makes your up throw kill, that's not as difficult as it seems. Since psychup has no time limit, you have time to fish for oomph and stack the buffs to go for the overkill, dealing almost double damage and instantly breaking shields with as little as an F-tilt. Thwack may get the Twitter clips, but psychup is what wins games. And unfortunately, it's clang that loses games. Hero turns into a metal statue of himself, being completely invulnerable but also completely unable to move until 5 seconds pass. This was obviously meant for surviving final smashes and casual play, but in competitive it's worse than useless. I suppose you could use it to wait out things like deep breathing or Arsene, but most of the time if your opponent knows the timing, you essentially shield break yourself and will probably lose a stock. It also makes Hero sink in the air at a fast rate, which means instant death off stage, but it can kill if it hits anything on the way down. Good luck with that. It's Hero's worst move and most likely the worst move in the game. Let's just move on to cover Hero's melee commands, starting with Flame Slash. This long-range swipe of fire does huge damage no matter if you hit the sweet or sour spot, and kills very early. The biggest problem with this attack is actually hitting it. Even though it's fast, you still have to have menu up, which restricts your movement. In my experience, it's best used to cover ledge options or quickly blast away jump-ins, since it's one of the few commands that covers that 1 o'clock blind spot. And of course, since it's melee-based, it's affected by oomph and psychup for some serious power. Straight from hot to cold, we have Crackle Slash, functionally identical to Flame Slash in every way except it does a little less damage and freezes opponents instead of simply blasting them away. This lets you wail on them and farm damage and MP until they mash out. Killing off of K-Slash can be tricky though and requires some precise timing. I say if you have the mana, your best option is full charge side B. Now the redheaded stepchild of the Slash trio, Metal Slash. This move does not have the crazy hitbox of the other two and simply does 1% with no knockback. That is, unless the target happens to be metal, in which case it kills them instantly at any percent. In competitive, this only comes into play in the Hero Ditto when someone accidentally gets clang, but hey, if you ever counterpick to Hazards on Kalos, I'm sure it'll come in handy. Lastly, we have the final boss of the melee commands, Hatchet Man. It's a simple move, slow but extremely powerful, instantly breaking shields, dealing insane damage and killing before 50%. Because it takes over half a second to come out, it takes some serious big energy to land this thing raw. Instead, it's best used as a shield break punish, preferably after casting a buff or two, as it's more reliable than hoping for a critical smash attack. Alright, we're in the miscellaneous section now, and amongst all the nonsense in Hero's kit, Heal is almost quaint. All it does is heal 11% damage, no more, no less. That's just enough to take you out of kill percent for some moves, or get you out of a confirm window. Make sure you are safe first, or you'll end up taking more damage than you healed. You get 2 per stock, with another being added whenever you take one. After that, it's off the menu. It's cheap in Magic and worth picking if no other commands are right for the situation. Zoom is an interesting command that beams Hero up wherever he may be and places him on a random spot in the stage. This is super useful for recovering, especially if up B can't get you back otherwise. It has over double the chance of appearing if you are near the side blast zones, making it pretty easy to get if you manage at least one reroll. It also gives back your jump, which is useful because you are still technically vulnerable if your opponent can guess where you'll end up. It does take about half a second to get moving though, and can get stuck if used underneath stages. Overall, it's probably the best recovery move in the game, thrifty on magic, and a good way to ignore ledge traps or wait out respawn invincibility. This command will save your bacon. And Kamikaze will cook your bacon in a shining blaze of glory. It's pretty self-explanatory. You blow yourself up and at the cost of a stock you get instant intangibility and deal massive damage to anything caught in its enormous unblockable radius. Ideally you want to use this to trade a high percent stock to take a low percent one, so you come back a full stock up with your MP recharged. Unfortunately, you don't always have a stock to burn, which means Kamikaze can really poison your command list and even lose you the game if you aren't careful. If you want a huge explosion but don't want to spend a stock for it, opt for Magic Burst and burn all your mana instead. The more MP you have when you use it, the bigger and stronger it is. At 1 MP, it's weaker than some jabs, but at 100 MP, it can do around 50% and kill just as early. Unfortunately, it's not all good news. It's extremely slow to start, allowing most characters to simply stuff you out of it or run away, and any projectile can still hit you through the explosion, after which you'll be left without any magic, naked, and afraid. It's best used as a ledge trap or edgeguard tool, where the opponent can't escape its huge size, and it's almost a guaranteed stock. It's also nice for killing after a K-Slash since they'll still be caught inside of it when they break free of the ice. Honestly, as impressive as it is when it works, it seldom appears in the menu, and situations to use it effectively are even rarer. One of Hero's worst commands. But aren't you tired of being nice? Don't you want to go ape shit? Hocus Pocus is a spell for you. This command lets Jesus take the wheel and stacks on another layer of RNG to the mix, with a random chance for a ton of different things to happen, including regaining or losing all your mana, becoming invincible for 8 seconds, growing a flower on your head, taking poison damage, falling asleep, shrinking or growing in size, witch timing yourself, or even... Most of the time though, you'll just cast out a random menu command, which since Hocus Pocus only takes 4 MP could let you get a powerful spell out at a discount, or it could blow you up. It's a give and take. I'd say the best effect you could get would probably be the Super Mushroom, as this greatly increases your speed and strength, making you pretty much unkillable, and most importantly, supersizes all your hitboxes. All your opponent can do is run basically. Hocus Pocus is everything crazy about Hero boiled down to one command. Most of the time it'll just screw you over, and it's probably not worth the risk, but every once in a while betting it all on green pays off.
Complete.
It's pretty plain to see Down B really expands Hero's versatility, and it seems like the rest of his moveset was balanced around it. The level of respect it commands from your opponent can be really palpable, and sometimes just the threat of, say, a kamikaze can make them play completely different, only for you to just pick something else or cancel the menu altogether. Just keep in mind when you cancel menu it takes 40 frames before you can try to bring it back up, and when you bring up menu it takes 19 frames before you can cast any commands. So even just mashing down B for the first command without reading it will still take almost half a second for the fastest of spells. It takes a lot of luck. Getting rushed down, pelted with projectiles, and hit out of menu over and over while you're trying to read and seek out the spell you need can be frustrating, but when everything lines up, command select can annihilate a fresh stock in seconds. So with that out of the way, let's take a short break before we get into Hero's normal attacks and see how they compare. Okay, let's kick things off with Hero's Jab. There isn't anything crazy about this attack, but it isn't bad. It does alright damage, it's quick but not too quick for a jab, and you could conceivably cancel jab 1 or 2 into other attacks to mix up your opponent. But aside from jab locks, you aren't going to get that much out of this attack but some okay damage. It does its job, but it's nothing special. Forward tilt has much more going on. This time Hero bashes the enemy with his shield before slicing them with a sword. The first hit gives Hero some front-facing invulnerability, meaning the shield will beat out other attacks and let you hit them with the second hit. This makes it great against other attacks, but its kill power is mediocre without any buffs, and it's extremely unsafe on shield. To get around that, I recommend keeping your opponent guessing by mixing up the timing, or just not doing the second hit altogether. Not a bad neutral and punish tool all things considered though. Next is down tilt. This little slide is similar to down tilts from Cloud or Banjo, but doesn't go nearly as far. It's relatively quick to come out, it's a decent poking tool, and it puts the enemy in a bad spot, but it's too laggy to get any true combos off of. Because it hits so low, it's great for scooping up from the ledge, but it doesn't do much damage and it will never kill. I don't know, it's not useless, but it could be so much better. Luckily, up tilt is so much better. This is one of Hero's best normal attacks without a doubt. With its crazy vertical hitbox, this attack can beat out pretty much everything, and will cover almost an entire platform at once. Provided you don't hit the sour spot near Hero's body, kill power is respectable, becoming even better with a buff or two. I'd say the only bad thing about this attack is that it can struggle to hit grounded opponents. It's much more of a strict anti-air and juggle tool, but it's quite good at that role. Dash attack should be familiar to anyone who has played Link in the past 10 years. This big leaping swipe is extremely powerful, and is actually safer on shield than down tilt, believe it or not. But you aren't just going to throw out a frame 21 dash attack and have it hit without some major reads or setups first. It's a Hail Mary option, and essentially a smash attack you can do on the chase down. It's hard to hit, but it really pays off when you do. Now before we get into Hero Smash attacks proper, there's yet another randomness mechanic I have to explain. On all of Hero Smash attacks, there is a 1 in 8 chance of landing a critical hit, dealing double damage, killing much earlier, being much safer, and making your opponent much angrier. And if you add for psychup, even if the critical hit happens to be complete overkill, it will still regenerate double the MP of a normal smash. I don't recommend going around spamming smash attacks hoping for a crit or anything, but it does incentivize one to find those openings for smash attack punishes more often, even when they won't necessarily kill. With that said, Hero's F Smash holds up very well on its own merit. Likely the strongest of Hero's unmodified normals, this big two-handed swing does a solid 18 base on the sword and is just fast enough to get some hardy whiff punishes with the range it has. Though it's a decent move vanilla, its main purpose is to be the catalyst for most of Hero's bullshit. Whether it's a psychup oomph boosted instant shield break or some kind of goofy combination of buffs and critical hits, F smash will net you the most damage consistently. Up smash, on the other hand, feels sort of unfinished. At first glance it looks like the same upward thrust that all the Marths have, but unlike those, it does not have any kind of grounded scoop hitbox at all. This means unless you are standing inside of a big body, you're not going to hit this attack on a grounded opponent. This makes actually landing the move rather tricky, and you're relegated to hard landing reads, difficult to hit combos, and platform tech chases. The kill power is okay at best, but due to what I can only assume is a coding error, the critical up smash has not had its knockback compensated like the others. This means critical up smash can kill close to 0%. I recommend the hose mad combo of down air spike to critical up smash to really send a message. Down smash is relatively honest and straightforward, just a simple quick 2-piece swipe front to back. Aside from the roll catching that most down smashes do, this attack's main purpose is to be the fastest way to access a critical hit. A frame 9 attack with a chance to do 26 base damage cannot be slept on. It's one of the best options to use out of a jab block for that reason, and pretty underrated as a whole. Alright, fun stuff over, and now we're onto Hero's grab game. Now, Hero's grabs are pretty fast, but severely lacking in range. Hero's no grappler, but grabs are still incredibly important for him. His attacks are not very safe or fast, so he loses the shield pretty hard. A tomahawk or similar grab mix-up is often the best way to break neutral in your favor and get some mana back in the process. His forward and back throws are the definition of standard and unremarkable. They do meh to okay damage, and they will never really kill unless you stack on a ton of buffs. But they give you some space, and they get the enemy off stage, and that's really all they need to do. Plus forward throw looks hilarious. Down throw has a bit more to talk about. Like a lot of down throws, this is a combo throw, doing less damage than the rest, but letting you follow up with things like forward air, nair, or double up air. It's certainly not the best or most consistent combo throw in the game, but Accelerator helps expand its combo range, and it's good for setting up tech chases on platforms too. Up throw is probably the most versatile throw Hero has. Not only is it a decent combo throw at lower percents, but it's also Hero's main kill throw. Now, vanilla it won't be killing anything until the 180s or so, but add in oomph, or especially psychup, and it has kill power on par with some of the better up throws in the game, killing before 150. Stack both boosts together, and it's the strongest up throw in the game. Just remember not to pummel, because it'll waste your psychup, unless you really want that extra 0.2%. Okay, so not the most stellar of ground games, but enough to make things interesting. Let's check out Hero's aerials and see if they make up for his lack of airspeed. I think we should start with what is, in my opinion, Hero's best normal, neutral air. Swinging his sword around him very similar to Ike, Hero's nair has the most utility out of all of his A-button attacks. It's got enough range with low enough end lag to make it usable as a safe landing option on shield, while also comboing into other attacks like fair if it hits. The hitbox starts above Hero at an okay frame 8, so it's also useful as a surrogate up air, platform coverage, and juggle tool. The only things that aren't that great about it is that it doesn't hit everywhere at once, so if you want to hit directly below Hero, you'll be waiting a while. Its damage is mediocre, and it will almost never kill, even with a boost. But it doesn't really need to kill when it does basically everything else just fine. Whether it's spacing in neutral, landing from disadvantage, or juggling from advantage, you'll be using this attack a lot. But there's a reason why you have to use nair as an up air. That's because Hero's up air is this. This dinky little kick does a dinky amount of damage and has an even dinkier hitbox, so you can't use it like a traditional up air. Instead, you have to use its quick speed to turn it into a sort of weird pressure and combo tool. It's good for messing with opponent shields on platforms, combos nicely out of throws, and hilariously it even kills. It technically is also a good combo starter, leading into almost all of Hero's attacks, including a potential critical up smash kill. In theory, this attack has a lot of potential use, but that doesn't mean crap if you can't actually hit it. Anything beyond poking shields is not worth the trouble in my opinion. Luckily, forward air is a lot more useful. Despite being almost twice as slow as neutral air, this big sword swipe covers a huge 180-degree swath in front of Hero and is very effective. Although it's laggier, the extra power and range over neutral air makes it even safer on shield, and it's a great way to keep the opponent out. Kill power ranges from poor on the sour spot to very good on the sweet spot with a buff or two active. Landing forward air is a great way to set up for follow-ups, the most potent being jab locks. There's a lot to like about this attack. but unfortunately, the poor startup speed can be a real pain to deal with, getting stuffed out when going for air-to-airs, requiring a lot of stage to use defensively, and giving the other player time to shield on reaction. It's good for a hero normal, but it could be better in the grand scheme. And back air just takes that mantra and cranks it up even more. It has an even better hitbox than forward air, it is more powerful, but it's also even slower at a pitiful 18 frame startup. That's slower than all of Hero's smash attacks. That's the same speed as K-Roll's back air. Because of this issue, this attack is best used while running away, as the advantage in range and power it has over forward air makes it great for whiff punishing, and it's still decent on shield when spaced away. A helpful trick is running off battlefield platform and immediately doing back air. This will make the hitbox come out just as you are landing. Back air is not an aggressive option, but it can get pretty powerful with the help of buffs, but it's up to you whether that makes up for its terrible speed. And last but not least, down air. This attack is just as slow as forward air and back air, but for a spike that's this strong, that's kind of expected. The range this spike has is also pretty incredible, easily poking through platforms and the stage. And on stage, the spike can set up for combos into up air or even up smash as mentioned before. It also has a lingering late hit, which makes this down air surprisingly good for landing. It's pretty laggy though no matter how you use it, so make sure you aren't just tossing it out, especially off stage. So, true to a JRPG, it seems like normal attacks are overall pretty lackluster if you aren't buffed up with something, and you'll need spells to do the real damage. We already covered down B extensively, but trust me, there is plenty more magic to talk about. So the first thing you'll need to know about Hero's quote, normal special moves is that they each have 3 stages of power, so they're really each 3 different special moves, similar to Robin's Thunder Charges. Neutral B is Frizz, Frizzle, and Kafrizz. Up B is Whoosh, Swoosh, and Kaswoosh, and side B is
Thunder! 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 Thundercats! Ho!
So jumping into neutral B, the stage 1 Frizz Fireball is actually much more useful than you'd think at first. The slow travel speed makes it good for covering space, it does decent damage, and it barely takes any magic to cast. The best part about this little projectile is the combo potential it brings. Because it's active for so long and pops up the opponent so well, if you commit to the follow-up, you can combo Frizz into a ton of moves, anything from a forward air to even a stage 2 side B. The later you hit it, the better it is for this. It takes 7 frames for Hero to even begin charging neutral B, so casting from a charging state is actually quicker than firing from the hip. After a super fast charge time of less than a second, Frizzle is online. This spell fires 2 fast traveling bolts that spiral around each other, each doing 9%. Because of its binary nature, one of these bolts can clank with another projectile while the other keeps going, hopefully hitting something else. Sometimes the 2 bolts can even break off and hit the same opponent consecutively, carrying them into the blast zone. This stage of neutral B doesn't have the same combo potential of the smaller Frizz, but the faster travel speed makes it great for tech chases, and the power is decent if you don't mind using the extra mana. Charge up for another second after that, and you'll reach Kafrizz, a giant firebomb of destruction dealing up to 31 base damage and killing way before 100%. Aside from max aura hijinks, this is by far the strongest storable charge projectile in the game. The power is intoxicating, but there are some caveats. First off, if you want to deal all that damage, you have to hit all of its multi-hits. This can be problematic as Kafrizz has a tendency to detonate on things other than the opponent, and they can slip out relatively unscathed. You can, however, use this detonation mechanic to throw a Kafrizz at the stage and cover the ledge. It may be fairly quick to fire since you don't have to go through that 7-frame charge startup, but the fireball starts very slow, gradually picking up pace. This can make it tricky to land if it's not point blank. The biggest problem with Kafrizz is that it takes a massive amount of magic to cast, and you cannot dump the charge to go back to Frizz or Frizzle. Once you have it charged, you are stuck with it until you can either dump 36 MP on it, or you die. This takes 2 very good options off the table and really hurts this attack's versatility. Important to note is that unlike something like Charge Shot, there is no 3/4 charge Kafrizz. If you cancel charge even a frame before you get to stage 3, you'll have to start all the way from the beginning of stage 2. Now that doesn't mean you don't get anything from charging. By B reversing, Hero can do some decent momentum shifting and charge cancelling movement, especially with Accelerator. Just remember you don't regain mana while charging. The Frizz family of spells is a boon for Hero's neutral and a very flashy way to incinerate a stock. Just be careful with how you manage the different charges. Hero's side B is much simpler. You get the same 7-frame charge startup. After that, let it go, you get a zap. Charge it a bit longer, you get a zapple. And charge it all the way, you perform a massive kazap. You can't charge cancel these ones. Once you press side B, you're on this train. But they all have their uses. Zap is an interesting move because it is technically 2 hits. The first swipe, then a lightning bolt that strikes downward and can hit things that are in the way. It does good damage for how little magic it uses, and it can smack someone even without any mana. The range isn't the best, but since you can turn it around and even get some crazy movement tricks with an Accelerator wave bounce, it's pretty good at whiff punishing and basically acts like a stronger forward tilt or forward air. Stage 2 Zapple is what you'll see hero mains use the most. This strikes the best balance of long range, decent speed, and huge damage all for under 20 MP. Like Zap, this attack is 2 hits, and the second hit is technically coded as a non-reflectable projectile. This means Oomph and Psychup will boost the first small hit, but not the one that does most of the damage. This is probably for the best, unless you want double buff Zapple doing almost 40 damage. Because it's really just a bigger Zap, Zapple performs much the same role, only can do it from a much longer range. Use it while landing from a distance, or while retreating for a big punish that might even kill depending on DI. Because it's the middle charge, you can mix up when to release it and keep the opponent on their toes. This is one of Hero's best spells. I suggest getting good with it. Stage 3, Kazap, is another one of Hero's many Hail Mary options. After charging for almost a second, a lightning bolt strikes Hero's sword, stunning everyone around him and giving him heavy armor as he swings and deals an absurd amount of damage, KOing even before 50%. Now obviously, an attack with that much startup is going to need a good read to hit, but it's a nasty surprise for anyone expecting to stuff out a Zapple, only to get armored and take Warlock Punch amounts of damage. As hilariously strong and flashy as this attack is, it's way too slow and mana intensive to recommend using seriously, aside from some pretty specific scenarios. Let's move on to Up B and talk about the whoosh spells, starting with, well, whoosh. This little dust devil comes out fast at just 4 frames, making it a frame 7 out of shield option and basically the only decent way Hero has of getting out of a bind. Because it's active for over 20 frames, you can sort of leave it behind for opponents to run into, or stick it in the pocket of the stage for an easy 2-frame or stage spike. It has very little landing lag, meaning you can catch ledge options and land on a platform to set up for an up tilt confirm. It barely takes any magic to cast, and it really helps with Hero's terrible disadvantage. Swoosh cranks it up a notch. It's bigger and does almost twice as much damage as Whoosh. What separates this spell from the other two in the family is that while the others remain more or less where you cast them, Swoosh shoots downward. This makes it one of the best edgeguard tools in the game, harassing recoveries with almost no risk. It's also useful for shooting down at someone trying to juggle you while you just gracefully float away to safety. Finally, full charge Kaswoosh launches 2 huge twisters that stay out for a long while and really put the opponent in a blender. Putting this at ledge essentially covers all options, and putting it off stage can create a huge no-fly zone. Grab ledge with it, and you can use the Gimmer Confirm to blast them with Kafriz for an early kill, but this setup is difficult to land and takes a lot of mana. As far as recovery goes, they each have their strengths and weaknesses. Whoosh is the go-to default. It's the quickest, cheapest, and goes far enough for most recovery jobs. It also has the least landing lag, which makes high recoveries much safer to do. Sometimes it just isn't enough though. Swoosh is the best overall option for recovery. It goes a little higher, but way further sideways, and barely costs any more mana to cast. It may be a bit laggier to land with, but the boost it gives to your airspeed make it easy to weave around and trick up your opponent. But if you need to recover from very low, you'll have no choice but to use Kaswoosh. Kaswoosh may not give the raw lateral distance of Swoosh, but if you have the mana to use it, you can recover from close to the blast zone. The main problem is that your movement is extremely stunted. This means if you miss or don't quite snap to ledge, which is common with Kaswoosh, you're at the mercy of your opponent as you gently float next to them hoping they don't slap you. It's also by far the laggiest option to land with, and just like the other two, you have no hitbox coming up. This is a problem with Hero's recovery as a whole. Certain moves and repeated edgeguards in general can absolutely burn through your mana. This is troublesome when you take into account the further you get knocked away, the longer you have to charge and the more mana you have to use to try to recover again. Even just stalling out your recovery takes more magic, and if you run out, that's it, you barely go anywhere. You do at least leave a hitbox behind to catch any character getting too overzealous with their edgeguard attempts, but think about how you're going to recover next time you use that last third of your mana to cast that Thwack. Alright, that's all of Hero's profuse moveset covered. How am I going to give such a crazy, polarizing character a final grade? Well, stay tuned and find out. As per usual, we start with speed, and Hero is getting a 2 out of 5. He's not the slowest character by a long shot, he's got decent run speed, but lackluster airspeed and terrible air acceleration combined with floatiness means Hero has trouble getting out of his own way in the air. Add in frame data that is mediocre bordering on awful, and you get a character that is a lot clunkier than his stats would lead you to believe. Accelerator can only do so much. Next is power, which was a tricky one to say the least. Hero's vanilla damage output and kill power aren't actually that great for how slow his attacks are. That being said, Hero has a cornucopia of ways to absolutely erase stocks and deal ludicrous damage. Psychup, oomph, critical hits, whack, thwack, kaboom, kafrizz, kamikaze, Hatchet Man. Even though most of these options are inherently inconsistent, there are just so many of them, and with potential damage numbers easily passing 100% for a single hit, I have to give Hero a 5 out of 5. For defense, we're sobering back up to a 2 out of 5. While Hero does have some good zoning options, and the mere threat of menu can often scare opponents where you want them, Smash is not a JRPG, and you'll find players are not often willing to wait for you to have your turn. Menu takes time to pull up and read, forcing Hero to frequently give up stage control to get some room to play. Lack of air movement makes landing rough, and get off me options are pretty much limited to whoosh. Not to mention the rather vulnerable recovery if you don't get a zoom. Once someone gets in on Hero, it can be really rough. Which brings us to versatility. On paper, Hero has a spell for every situation. Unfortunately, you don't get to decide when those spells show up, and you don't always have the means to use them. The long and short of it is, Hero is too slow and vulnerable to deal with hard rushdown. His normal attacks aren't safe enough to pressure defensive turtle characters, and projectile users will constantly prevent him from playing his game, while his mediocre speed and finite resources prevent him from breaking their zone. Yes, his spells and buffs do help alleviate these issues, but they are not reliable enough to hang every match on, and for that reason, Hero is getting a 2 out of 5. Overall, Hero is an interesting case of a character that looks top tier in Twitter clips, but play him in a tournament and the flaws start to show. Sometimes he can feel like a bunch of incredible specials looking for a character. He can get the job done for sure, and you never feel like you're out of it, but the RNG can make the simplest of matches way closer than they need to be, and that can be stressful in a tournament setting. All that said, if you thrive for that kind of excitement and can deal with the other mediocre aspects of his kit, Hero is some of the most fun you can have playing this game. Embrace the jank, grab the randomness by the reins, and ride with Hero into victory. Thanks for watching, everybody. This video is my biggest yet and took probably the most amount of work. So to my fans, thank you for your patience, and please share this video around. People need to be more informed about this character. Extra special thanks to my patrons who have stayed loyal to me in the long period between uploads. You guys are the best, and you're the reason why I do this. You can consider this video the season finale of the character review series, but if you would like to vote on who gets covered first when it comes back, just reply to the pinned comment below. This year has been great, and I hope to do more videos like this for you in the future. Thanks, and I'll see you all next time.